And we'll say, got it there. I know it's been a little bit rainy out today, and that can kind of mess up the internet feeds, but we'll see how we're going. Hopefully we hold steady. So everybody, I'd like to welcome back to Alabama Care. We have Mrs. Anna Taylor, the Business Relations Specialist at ADRS. And today we're going to be talking about neuro-inclusive recruiting and employment. At this point, I'd like to hand it over. Mrs. Taylor, if you would introduce yourself.
Hi, Alex. Thanks for having me here today. Hello, everybody out there. I'm Anna Taylor. I'm the Business Relations Specialist with the Alabama Department of Rehabilitation Services. And our mission over here at the Alabama Department of Rehab Services is to help people with disabilities to achieve their maximum potential. And I'm excited to be talking to you today.
Now, what exactly does the Business Relations Specialist do? And what does that look like for someone receiving services?
Okay, I have a really good slide for that, Alex. So if you don't mind, is it okay if I share that?
Please.
It's going to be a lot easier to show you.
Yeah.
We like to do a lot of show us what you're talking about over here. And let's see, are you seeing that right now? Are you seeing that
see
the meeting side?
Yep, I see the ready net. I see the starting page there.
Awesome. Okay, so right there, you're going to see from left to right, this is a very colorful slide. And we're going to talk about the left slide first is recruiting and hiring. And then we're going to talk about technical assistance that we provide over here, a lot of accessibility ideas. And then going over to the right here, inclusive workplace. We do inclusion training and job retention. But starting back over, we do a lot of pre-hire work experience at ADRS. A lot of people with disabilities have not worked in the traditional work site before. So we want to help them by offering solutions to where they can go to see an employer and try a job out to see if it's a fit. So we can look at make sure it's accessible, that we can make sure that it's a good fit for the employer as well. And we have lots of different ways to do that by, having these internships. We call them pre-work experiences, pre-hire work experiences, on-the-job training and apprenticeships. But moving to the next block there, that blue block, it says technical assistance. A lot of employers want to do the right thing and accommodate people with disabilities, but they don't always know how. And so we serve as a no-cost consultant for government and private businesses in Alabama to help them through workplace consultation for figuring out what to do to make their workplace accessible. And we do lots of trainings. That's over there at the left there. You can see there's a figure there with a guide dog. We talk about how to make the workplace inclusive, from disability etiquette to neuro-inclusive recruitment to figuring out what people's biases are. We have lots of training. And then we have job retention that we help employers with, especially with the light of COVID. A lot of people had difficulties returning back to the workforce after they had COVID. And so we help employers that have an employee that's been injured, or if they have a disability due to that injury, or if they have an illness, return back to the workforce.
So you're really working on both ends there. You're helping the individual that's receiving services. So somebody that is looking for employment, maybe is having a little trouble getting employment, they'll come to you and they'll say, hey, how can I navigate this? Then you're also working on the end of the business. Someone that's looking to be more inclusive, someone that's looking to hire, you say at no cost to them. So if an employer is thinking, well, right now is a really tough time for hiring and retention. So if somebody as an employer is in that boat, they can contact you, and it's free of cost to them for you to kind of consult with them.
Absolutely. Alex, people get bored by statistics, but the last I heard, last month, we had a 2.9% unemployment rate in Alabama. And so employers are looking for talent right now, and coming to the Alabama Department of Rehabilitation Services to recruit from us is a good way for them to get into that untapped talent pool. And the business relations program over here has a dual customer, if you will. And so our customer is not only the person with a disability, they're our customer, we represent them, but our customer are also business. And so we help them do the right thing, help guide them. And so we have that dual customer approach over here in our program.
It reminds me of like kind of matchmaking, that you're bringing two people together for mutual benefit, that they're both enjoying there. And I've said it before, but kind of a silver lining of the pandemic has been that individuals receiving services have got more employment opportunities, working large. So for somebody that's looking for services, do you notice that most people are coming to you for their first job out of college or out of high school, or are they a little bit older and have been on the job and are looking for advancement or new accommodations?
That's a good question. Just a little bit about my background, Alex. I was a headhunter. If anyone knows what that is, that's somebody that's paid to find people jobs. And I did that for 10 years in Montgomery. And then I came over here and like you said, recruiting is a big part of that. And so, people with disabilities hear about the Alabama Department of Rehabilitation Services from all different ways. We have a robust amount of community service partners like Easter Seals and Goodwill and United Ability, and people spread throughout the whole state. And so they come to us and we help them find a job, but it's not just people transitioning out of high school or youth, they're adults too. Like I mentioned earlier, people find out about us because they know that we help people with disabilities in general. So sometimes they'll just call and say, hey, this is what I've got going on. And we help them apply for services. And we have, several hundred master degree rehabilitation counselors over here that work with those individuals with disabilities, no matter how long it will take to get them to where they need to be, whether it's self-employment or to retain their employment or get trained for employment, or if they're already trained to go find employment. So we serve all different peoples, all different disabilities, we say from birth all the way through. So I know we have early intervention over here. So our babies and our most vulnerable citizens of Alabama that have been impacted by disability, all the way to our more mature workforce that, they want to continue working. Someone just told me they had someone 80 years old that they found a job for recently. So we serve the full spectrum of people with disabilities here.
Yeah, if you are in the state of Alabama, ADRS is godsend. They, as you mentioned, really support from birth until long term. One of the things that we kind of put on our talking points is neuro-inclusive. So this was a term that I really haven't talked about before. So if you could define neuro-inclusive, maybe neuro-divergent, I wrote that down, but I don't know if that's the correct term.
Okay, cool. So Alex, I'm going to share another slide. And this is a new term. This has been out for a while, actually. Judy Singer actually is the one that is coined this term, but I'm going to go ahead and share my slide again.
Yes, ma'am.
And hopefully it'll pull up. Are we seeing a brain up there?
I am seeing a brain.
Okay, good. So, there's a lot of, there's an umbrella of neurodiversity. And then under neurodiversity, there's different things. Neuro-inclusive recruitment is just, being inclusive of those brain differences. And we're going to unpack that in a second. But the slide basically is showing a colorful brain. And neurodiversity simply means brain diversity. It's the viewpoint that brain differences are normal rather than deficits, and there's like no right type of brain or a best type of brain. So neurocognitive function is basically like a social construct. It's a, and neurodiversity, neuro-inclusive recruiting, all of that is to normalize brain diversity, to reduce stigma about thinking differences, if you will, Alex. And so, neurodiversity simply put means that people learn, experience, and interact with the world differently from each other. And I think we all can agree that we all are neurodiverse on some level or neurodivergent on some level. And but the word neurodivergent refers to an individual who has a less typical cognitive variation. And so those variations are growing a little bit, but the common terms that we're seeing under this umbrella would be autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, or dyscalculia. And then neurotypical refers to an individual of typical development and, cognitive function, or someone whose brain behaves the way society expects them to. So,
I think if we broke it down, everybody would consider themselves neurodivergent in some form. And if we're lucky enough to live long enough, you're going to have a disability at some point in your life, and you receive services. So to think of that as, we're all kind of in this same boat. You don't have to press anyone away. The words we use matter. And we're just a little bit different sometimes, and that's okay. Now, it says dyspraxia here and dyscalculia. I've never seen those words. What are they?
Okay, so dyspraxia, I've got something I can talk to you about that a little bit later, but it's just someone moves a little bit differently. Their coordination is different, and dyscalculia, they might have trouble with numbers. So, that type of thing. But, just because all of us have difficulty in some areas of our life. And so that particular disability falls under the neurodivergent space, but it's a different way of achieving something. So it's just that, you process a little bit different, or you move a little bit different, or you socialize differently, or, you introvert or extrovert, you express your personality a little bit differently, and you also think differently. So, yeah.
I noticed that I struggle sometimes with numbers in Excel or QuickBooks. So run a company, have to keep the books, those types of things. I misplace, like if it's $200.83, it's $200.38. I do it all the time, and I'm always off by pennies when I get to my monthly end. It's almost like a dyslexia of numbers that I have. It always messes me up. I don't know why. My brain goes, okay, yeah, but my fingers always opposite direction there.
Yeah.
So how many people would you say are neurodivergent?
Okay, so I've got another slide for that, because one thing I want to mention, and by the way, I forgot to describe myself for those of us that are listening and maybe don't know what I look like. I'm a blonde white woman wearing a very bright green shirt with leaves on it, by the way, and I have white earrings on. So I forgot to describe myself. Alex, I wanted to do that for those of us that are blind, that are participating in today's session. But
I should probably do the same. Then we'll give it right back to you. So I'm a white male. I have brown hair. I'm balding. My forehead keeps getting bigger. Sitting in my home office wearing a green throwover, and I'm a clean shaven face. Okay, hand it back over to you.
Perfect. So I just want to mention this before we talk about the stats, but Harvey Bloom really put this well. He said that neurodiversity may be every bit as crucial for the human race as biodiversity is for life in general. So, who can say what form of wiring will prove best at any given moment? And I really, really like that, Alex, because it talks about neurodiversity, and it just makes sense to me. But here's your data. At least 1 in 7 people identify as being neurodivergent. And this is according to Text Help. And this is the latest statistic of from this year. I want to say it was in April. But 1 to 2% identify as being autistic, 4% have ADHD, 10% are dyslexic, and 5% are dyspraxic. So there's your data there.
Yeah, so that's quite a bit of the population. And as you mentioned, I think if we look throughout history, some of the biggest advancements in human history probably come from people that are not so much under the bell curve, but might be on the outsides of the bell curve, that are making these big leaps for humankind. If you do the same thing every day, you're not going to make, advances. And so you need people that are a little bit different to you in your tribe, to come up with new ideas and kind of point out some things that maybe you're not seeing, is the importance of, having a group of people that are neurodivergent to each other and thinking in different ways. Now, when we talk about from a business standpoint and a hiring standpoint, what is an employer, what are they looking for when they're neuro-inclusive recruiting?
Okay, so neuro-inclusive recruiting is a new concept, Alex, and some larger businesses have been working in this space for a while, you know, as we noticed autism becoming more prevalent and individuals that were autistic, you know, were entering the workforce. Some of the larger companies were pivoting to, you know, come up with programs that were more neuro-inclusive. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. Let me get to that
Sure.
slide really quick. Employers were noticing, and this is a pie chart, that there were some barriers, you know, that they were finding in their own job descriptions that were keeping individuals, a group of individuals, you know, from applying. And, you know, people gave them feedback about their jargon and their job descriptions, you know, unnecessary information that was on there, a lot of euphemisms, which, you know, I use
What
it
would
one
be
today.
What would be an example of a euphemism?
I used a euphemism today, and as I was sending the email, I thought, you know, there's no one neurodivergent on my team that, you know, needed me to explain this, but, you know, just being conscious of saying things like a rule of thumb, or, you know, just little jargon that we use, you know, just in joking. It's just part of our American culture. You know, individuals often that are neurodivergent don't really get that. You know, you meet one person that's neurodivergent, you met one person that is neurodivergent, kind of like they say about autism. But, you know, saying good communication skills on like every single job description is not necessary, because not every job requires that. And so an individual that identifies differently may not apply when they could have been a good fit. And so businesses learned very quickly that they needed to shift how they were describing their jobs. And so, you know, they wanted to become a lot more neuro-inclusive. And so here are some tips, you know, that I wanted to share. And you probably have another question about that. So let me stop real quick before I move on.
No, you're fine. So it was really for hiring specific to the job. So if your job can be work from home or deals with Excel or numbers, then you probably don't need to put on the job application. You need to come into the office every day and speak to 10 people in a roundtable meeting. And I would think it helps employers kind of further define what that position looks like and who exactly they're hiring for. When you might have, you know, maybe some people, when they see you got to go into the office and have a roundtable, they're like, that's not me. But if you were hiring specifically for the job, and all the outcome are for those jobs are, I need those reports that are all numbers. And some people are shying away from that. So I think it helps the employer kind of further define what that position is and get a good idea for who that person could be. I think it's a good practice for the employer.
Yeah, well, in light of COVID, when, you know, there was accessibility inequities that were very obvious when we all had to start working from home, you know, employers realized very quickly that some of their employees with disabilities were not able to participate in the same way. And so it became very important, you know, it was a movement, if you will, to make sure that their practices were more inclusive. And indeed, in 2021, one of the biggest, the number one job postings that they had was a diversity, equity, inclusion person, which is now a diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility person, or a DEIA. And so, you know, companies learned that things had changed. I think COVID brought a lot of this out. And so I think businesses wanted to be inclusive, but they didn't know how, and they hadn't really had anything push them to do so. And so there's been this major disruption as it pertains to onboarding people with disabilities, onboarding people in general. You know, we're doing it by Zoom now, and it's really hard to imagine the world prior to that. But, you know, this slide right here has a person that has some of those ambiguous types of questions being asked, like, what interests you about this job? And, you know, that's kind of ambiguous. But, you know, some other disruptions, and having been a recruiter for so long now, for over almost 23 years, you know, I don't like to date myself there, Alex, but, you know, giving someone the interview questions before the interview is like simply unheard of. But businesses that want to be competitive, you know, employers that recognize the value of inclusion, true inclusion and diversity, includes all people, including people with disabilities, which are one of the most under-tapped people groups. And it's the one group that any one of us, Alex, can join at any time. Okay. And so if you look at it like that, you know, it's important that all things are inclusive. If we can, you know, and it's a journey for all of us. And so a lot of people were really nervous about, hey, I need to give the questions to the interview beforehand. But, you know, giving things like who's going to be in the interview. I think we all want to know that. You know, where's it going to take place? Like, exactly. So you're not sweating, you know, 15 minutes before you get there. You're figuring out where you're supposed to go. You know, approximately how long is the interview going to take place? You know, people that are neurodivergent, those types of things are very important. Just to, you know, feeling safe and being able to make a plan, and then helping them with additional steps such as like giving a tour, you know, having an assessment. And like I said, providing those questions in a written format, you know, is good. And, you know, having applications that are accessible, first of all.
Yeah.
People learned that their applications weren't accessible during COVID.
Yeah. I think, you know, even when you're talking about the length of the interview, I like to have a plan when going in, even if I'm going food shopping. I write down my list of food as I would be walking through the store. So I write it down as I'm going to the chicken and the deli first, then I'm going to the vegetables. What do I need here? I have that plan when I go to the store. I would like that plan if I'm interviewing. I want to know who I'm going to be in the interview with so I can mentally prepare. It puts me more at ease. I'd like to know the topics we're going to discuss. And even if, let's say, I use public transportation or I have to get a bus back, well, then I should know when I have to tell that bus to come pick me back up. If it's going to be in a half an hour or an Uber, whatever that looks like, half an hour, or if it's going to be 2 hours. So it's just being a little bit more considerate, I think, for the potential employee. Now, what are some things that an employer has said that's kind of a bulk of, no, I don't want to do that? What are some excuses that you've seen for employers not doing this?
Well, you know, the employers that we work with obviously know we help people with disabilities. But let's be honest, Alex, there is a great fear of the unknown, and that's just the human condition that we're in. And so we found that employers that have those types of questions, they might think this is strange or whatever. We try to help them understand that this is where the world is moving. And if you can either get on board with this or you're going to be left behind, because you won't have the applicants apply for your positions. And so if you cannot pivot to where we are headed, you're just simply not going to survive the era that we are now in, that we have been in for a while. And so, I mean, we know that with things getting canceled, things getting disrupted, you know, you can become irrelevant very quickly, and your brand, as good as it was or as superior as it was, if you refuse to pivot into this new normal, which is not, I don't really like that phase, but that's what everybody says, you know, you're going to be left behind. So, but employers that are thriving in this workforce shortage, and it's not just Alabama, Alex, it's all over the whole entire country. There is a shortage of people, and but the people that want diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, they're the ones that are going to have people apply, because it's going to be a place that welcomes them, where they feel like they belong. And so, you know, making sure people feel a sense of belonging is a priority that businesses need to make. Well, businesses need to make it a priority. And it is a priority that is happening in this space right now for all of us. And I think we all can relate to wanting to belong somewhere. And you know, if you have a cold work environment where it's stressful and, you know, it's ambiguous, you don't know what's going on, you know, people are going to leave. And so you're going to lose your workforce. And so, you know, reevaluating your job descriptions to make sure that, you know, they say that they welcome neurodiverse employees or welcome people with disabilities, period. Even if you can get to that point, just say that we welcome you. That's important right now for this generation, and certainly for the workforce that's out, because you know, people are no longer willing to accept workplaces that don't let them feel safe or where they don't feel like they belong.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the silver lining of this this pandemic is it's really pushing this to the forefront for employers. If they want to be competitive, like you said, and they want to continue their retention and employment there, they have to take on these new roles. But it's really just getting down to wanting to work with like a good group of people. Like, hey, our arms are open, we all have some differences, but let's come together on a common core, a mission. I'm not going to hold your hand through this I'm not going to do your job for you. That's why you're coming on, but we want to know that why you're with us and we're working together, that is a safe space. The accommodations are for you. And to always be open in that sense. Now, what are some of the benefits that you're seeing for employers that are going through this process with ADRS?
Okay, so let me get to that slide here too. I think this is going to be a little bit easier. Let me just back up here. Sorry about that. Okay, so we're going to start with autism. We talked about the numbers earlier, okay? And so working with ADRS, businesses don't have to go on this journey by themselves. Let's say you're an employer and maybe you're a large employer and you need to hire people and make sure that you start with training, because not every, you could be the advocate or the ally within the company, but as you try to encourage your leadership to make some changes, it starts with training. And so you can partner with us to learn how to become a more inclusive employer. And, training is everything. And so, we can't blame people because you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. And so, for people with disabilities that expect employers to just know how to accommodate them, keep in mind that they may not have training, refer them to us so that we can help them. But the benefits of hiring, we're talking about neurodivergent and neurodiversity talent. Individuals with autism, and I'm going to get yours, Alex, as you mentioned that you might have dyslexia or something like that, but you have a really cool benefit to bring employers. But individuals with autism on this slide here from the top to the bottom, it's concentration. Autistic people, they can be intense oftentimes, where they're just pressed to focus on a task at hand. They have a superior attention to detail. Now, keep in mind, not everyone with autism has attention to detail, but many, many, many do. And so they're also very creative. If you're in a large group setting and you have a problem and the individual with autism is there, they're probably going to have a very creative solution for whatever the problem is. And there's a study that said that individuals with autistic traits excel with producing unusually creative ideas. And so that's something that we all need and want, because we, people want to stand out right now and they want to thrive, but productivity too, even they can be even more productive than the neurotypical. And so there's another term for you there. And just like with anybody, let me go back to that. Yeah. Individuals with autism can be more productive than their neurotypical counterparts if they feel like they belong there, if they feel
that last phrase there, when fostering an environment to let them grow and reach their, so they can be more productive, but the environment needs to be there for them to do that.
Exactly. And I think all of us can relate to that. I mean, if we're in an environment where we can thrive, we're all going to do better. And so just being mindful about that. Individuals with ADHD, have, they channel that energy into their work. And so they can, they have that resilience just from top to the bottom. And in the picture there's a figure that is bouncing a bunch of different things at once, from left to right. They've got this on their mind. They've got a checkbook. They're balancing. There's a target. I mean, it's just have a lot going on. And so they have basically all these windows opened up in their head, and they minimize and open them a lot, and so they work on a bunch of different things at one time with great intensity. And so that often makes them extremely resilient to adapt new strategies. Individuals with ADHD have to adapt constantly because they are wired differently, just like all neurodivergents are. And so that makes them very resilient and very persistent as well. They're going to put their sights on something and pursue it. But Individuals with dyslexia, and Alex, you didn't say you had a diagnosis of this, but
I've never been formally diagnosed, but I say a lot. When I get excited about things, I notice that the sentences are switched or the numbers are switched.
okay, well, problem solving is a huge thing for individuals with dyslexia because you think in images. And so that's why we're using images today. So those of you that are neurodivergent that are participating, can kind of see that not everything has to be spoken. Not everyone learns that way. I know that my husband likes to listen to a lot of Audible stuff, and I'd rather see pictures. It's just different, different learning style. But individuals with dyslexia specifically, highly creative. But one thing I think is super cool, Alex, is that individuals with dyslexia often can spot patterns and see trends in data because of the way that they're wired. And so that is a really cool thing that they bring, to their workforce, to employers. So somebody that can like spot trends and data, I think in this world, in this environment is a skill that most people want to have.
And I've read books, watched a lot of videos of founders of huge corporations that openly say they have dyslexia. Richard Branson, the founder of Virgin Records, Virgin Galactic, billion-dollar guy, billion-dollar industries. He openly says in his interviews, I have dyslexia. This is when I didn't do well in school, these types of things. But my dyslexia, and as you mentioned, kind of helps you see patterns there. And that helped him, see patterns in the business world, and he used it to his advantage. And I think it's really important. If you go see a doctor and they're like, oh, you have dyslexia or you have ADHD, these types of things. Sometimes people can have a negative feeling about that. Oh, I'm being labeled as different. And I think it's a switching of the mentality there is, we're all a little different. I'm going to take how I'm built and I'm going to do the best that I can do in what I want to do. And that's my superpower a little bit. And I think everybody can think of it as a superpower. You are different, but it allows you to focus on these things. Do it the best way you can. Do it to the max. It's your superpower. Dive into it instead of kind of shying away from it.
Alex, I like to say this, a lot of young people in school, they're labeled as having a disability, and it makes them feel some kind of way, such as, oh, you have a learning disability, And so I would rather, I want to turn that term around, and it's called you learn differently. Instead of having a learning disability, you just learn differently. And if you think about it, we all learn differently. There's a standard way that some people, the neurotypicals, learn, but there's a lot of us, 1 in 7, that learn differently, and that's okay. As you can see, it's, brilliant people have started corporations and have some of the most amazing ideas that have also learned differently, and they're absolutely not in the box, and they don't think like everyone else. So I just wanted to mention that for those of you that are struggling with a label of being having a learning disability, just remember that it's not a disability. You just learn differently, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah, and I think in the past, even in school, it was a lot of that responsibility of how you're learning differently and how you're going to navigate that fell back on you and your parents to set up these rules or these systems that you would need to get an A in the class or graduate from high school. And then we do a lot better by introducing some of these principles in schools to help students, those types of things. And now we're getting to the point where we're introducing them into employment and being more inclusive in that employment process for employees. Now, what are is there another slide here after dyslexia that falls in that same?
Yes, and I wanted to say this, that it's important that employers have somebody that's trained on, to be neuro-inclusive that can respond to interviewees. So, sometimes you have somebody that you're working with, you set up the interview, and if that person is not trained to be neuro-inclusive, it's a real turnoff, So it needs to not just be the recruiter that has gotten the person to apply, but everybody that's involved in the onboarding process, they need to be trained on what that looks like, and so here's some additional tips here.
Just one second. So do you guys have an upcoming, how do people get trained? Do they go and physically sit at a conference at ADRS?
That's a good question. So anybody can ask us to come train their business. Now, The training on neuro-inclusive recruiting is about 30 minutes, and then we have a little bit longer version, so that's 60 minutes. So your business can contact us, and I'll give you my contact information at the end when we provide some resources for you to explore neuro-inclusive recruiting a little bit more. But you can reach out to us. We're local. We can come in person, and we like to train you on disability etiquette, because it's not just neurodiversity. We're here talking about that today, but we want employers to feel comfortable talking to people with disabilities, period, so that there's not, so it's not awkward. It doesn't have to be awkward at all. And so we have trainings for all kinds of different stuff that you can call us, and we'll come to you, or we can do by Zoom or whatever your favorite platform is.
I love to come to you. Come on site. I'm going to hold a team meeting. Everybody, this is Mrs. Taylor, and we're going to learn about neuro-inclusive hiring and recruiting today. Okay, I'm going to give it back to you for the onboarding.
Okay, so just a few more tips, because we were talking about that space and making it okay. So again, just remember, one size does not fit all. But as a society, Alex, we've tried to live that way forever. Whether it's clothing, whatever. Everybody likes this kind of food. We all eat the same stuff at the cafeteria. That has been disrupted. One size does not fit all, period, but it also doesn't fit all during interviewing. And so having an acclimated climate is important in order to get those individuals to apply. So take time to explain things. That's number one, such as breaks or how to request leave. This is after they've started the job, so that make it really clear. Maybe you got it all right and you've recruited them and they're coming on, but now when they're there, these supports are very important to set up. So, ice-breaking activities are not always comfortable for people, not just neurodivergent individuals, but people with anxiety, where they're like forced to like engage with people, and, it can cause a lot of stress. And so, we encourage employers just to check in with that new hire first and make sure if they're comfortable. Isn't it cool to have an employer like ask you if you're comfortable? That's not done. And so, making people feel like they belong and that they're part of that team is important. And so, that's just normal. That everybody wants to feel that way. They want someone to say, hey, just check in on you. And then have some supports. A supportive supervisor or management team is essential. Let them know that they can be approached and it doesn't matter. No question they have is like, too small or too big or whatever. And then, a lot of employers have groups, employee resource groups. They're also called affinity groups. There's a bunch of names for them, but basically, and small businesses can have this too. Like there's veteran support groups, single mother groups, whatever, and connecting them to other individuals that are, supportive of their neurodivergence is good.
Yeah, so it's I think I would think of it more as just like neighborly communication and teamwork.
Yeah.
Do the things that you would want to do for your local team, your local neighborhood, incorporate those into the workplace there. Take the extra step, reach out, be supportive, see what those mean. I feel like I haven't been doing that very well. Clifton could probably chime in on this. We're a small team, me, Clifton, Kathleen, Noel. So I'm taking pointers. I probably need to do a little bit better on reaching out to my team. I'm typically the opposite of a micromanager, where it's like, I want to get the right people on board, let them do what they do. I don't want to constantly be haggling them for this, and this. But maybe it's good for me to reach out a little bit more for this situation. Clifton, if you want to unmute and have anything to say about that, go ahead.
We're all on a journey, Alex. Okay. Yeah. And so, there's not one business that's perfect or getting, everything right. And it's okay to learn as we go, but to at least try to normalize the fact that, there are people wired differently and not everybody feels comfortable applying one way. Some of those weird questions we ask are not necessary. In our training, we show a video of a very awkward interview. Their employer's like, how are you doing today? And, all of those euphemisms, so what do you think about our company? And, that seems like a normal question. But sometimes, leaving things that aren't black and white, stereotypical answers would, kind of be an icebreaker. But for individuals that are neurodivergent, sometimes they just want to get to the point. They want to say why they're there. They're not there to sell themselves. They're like, hey, this is who I am. Here's my experience and all of that. And, it's that training really, really is helpful for people that, like myself, I realized, wow, when I've interviewed, recruited, interviewed, and hired people, I certainly haven't done that. But not everybody needs you to do that, obviously. But, if you welcome neurodivergent applicants to apply and disclose, not everybody chooses to disclose, but we found during our trainings, even in the chat, people will start disclosing. And, their employers will come back to me and say, I didn't know that Sally had hearing loss. I didn't know that. I didn't know that, whomever had whatever disability. And so making it okay by having trainings at your business and inviting people to come, like, hey, we're having this training. That's a first step to say, oh, wow, my employer actually cares. There's a manufacturing employer in Prattville that has this coming up in at the end of the month to train them. And they've made a real big deal. They want their entire manufacturing plant to be part of it, because it doesn't just need to be leadership. The people that are actually working day to day with people with disabilities may also not know how to interact. And so they knew it was important that if we're going to train everybody, let's train everybody at one time. So they're allowing them, when they normally have to clock in and clock out, to have extra time to train. And it's going to take a little bit of, we have to pivot a little bit and break up the training. But how cool is that? That they don't want it just to be from the top down. They want it to be a culture of change. And so I commend them, and I'm not going to put them out in live, but they're modeling the way. And that is what we're looking for, is business that truly wants change. And if you're going to change, go all the way.
Yeah, I've heard that before from employers, bigger employers, saying when they hire people that receive services, maybe from ADRS or services from ADMH, that the atmosphere of the workplace transforms into more of a team, family-based atmosphere. And it becomes much more pleasant to go to work when people are caring for each other and they have that essentials there. Now, you mentioned that in the chats, when you're talking about being neuro-inclusive, people are saying, oh, I do have hearing loss, or the employer saying, I didn't know, so-and-so needed these services or received these services. What would you say to somebody that may be hesitant to speak about that to an employer?
Well, a good way of looking at it is, if you need accommodations, you absolutely need to disclose. And you have many people that fought for the civil rights, to have the Americans with Disabilities Act put in place, and it's there for you. And so, but having that culture of not having fear, to where even in the break room, you can post something about the ADA in a nice way, where it's not about lawsuits and scary things, because ADA does not have to be scary at all. In fact, the ADA often protects employers, because you have to be a person with a disability that is qualified for the job, and you've got to be able to perform the essential functions of the job with or without reasonable accommodations, okay? And so it doesn't have to be scary. But navigating those reasonable accommodations and having a safe space where you can disclose and talk about that is what we encourage employers to do, however it is in their communications, in the building, have stuff put up. We welcome you to disclose. We're here for you. It's okay, kind of thing. And so if somebody is concerned about whether or not they need to disclose because of retaliation, or they feel some kind of way, maybe it's not time for you to do that. If you feel that kind of way, we want you to disclose if you need an accommodation. But further than that, we want the business to realize that we are no longer in a place in 2022 where things are going to be the same as they were in the 70s or in the 80s. And so the last I checked, 87% of the workforce were millennials. And you grew up with No Child Left Behind. You had students with disabilities in your classrooms, okay? And so you are used to working with people with disabilities. You're producing material online that has commercials with people with disabilities. And There's movies made with people with disabilities, and it's not unusual, okay? They're members of our community, and they represent one of the largest, bases to buy your products and services, okay? And so, normalizing that in work and on the job is, this should have been happening a long time ago. And so, we're not gonna, this new generation that's coming out now, Z and the alphas, it's not, there's not going to be room for that old ideology anymore. All right. And so those of us that are still in the workforce that are used to some of the old ways, it's okay that this is scary and it's a journey, but you can call our agency, and we're not the ADA police. Okay. We're there to help you. And most people, honestly, Alex, out there now that are hiring, they want to do the right thing. So that's really what it's about.
Yeah, and I think we're going through a little bit of a revolution here in the society, in the way of thinking, in the hiring and that kind of stuff. Now, as you mentioned, for those that maybe receive services and are hesitant about speaking to an employer because maybe a little bit of backlash or how they think the employer is going to think about that as services, you mentioned the ADA, it doesn't have to be scary. And I think a lot of confidence can come from knowing your rights, knowing the work that people have done before you, that you're sitting on the shoulder of giants that have paved the way for you to have these rights and these freedoms, and being familiar with those, having confidence, maybe not always throwing it in the face or being harsh about it, but understanding that you have the right to these accommodations if you need them. But as an employer, I want that because I want you to do a great job. You're on this team. Now that you're on this team, I want you to do the best job possible for the mission that we have as a team. I'm going to try and do what I need to do to give you what you need to be the best person you are when you're working. So I would appreciate if you would tell me what you need.
Good.
And speaking of that, what are some, what's a success story? So we're talking about from both sides here, from someone that's looking for employment, receiving services, someone from an employer standpoint. Let's talk about bringing these two together and a success story.
Okay, so in Alabama, y'all, there are so many success stories. We have work-based learning opportunities going on right now. We have hiring initiatives all over the state. We have employers calling us all the time trying to recruit from us because they value and recognize that hiring people with disabilities is good. It's good for their business. And so, whenever you ask for a success story, I just kind of want to pivot nationally. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read some stuff that's going on nationally. And I just encourage you that are watching to check this out. So some of the larger corporations have, when it comes to neurodiversity, specifically Microsoft and Ford and IBM, those are all different industries. You've got the IT industry, you've got the automobile industry, and then Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, you got the financial industry, and Hewlett Packard. They've all launched neurodiversity hiring initiatives, okay? It's very specific. And so with that, one of the heads of JP Morgan said, our autistic employees achieve an average of 48% to 140% more work than their typical colleagues, depending on the roles. And so, that's huge. And those big box employers recognize those initiatives, but I'm also the liaison for the Disability In. And, we're going to give you guys some resources a little bit later, but Disability In has this really cool neurodiversity roundtable, okay? And there's some best practices that they give to talk about how to do this. And there's tons of videos and success stories. But, whenever, you're trying to start an initiative, that's great. And Disability In, I was just at their conference and they had a panel of a bunch of different employers I didn't list that were talking about, how to get there, how they got there on their journey. And ideally, in the perfect world, which obviously we're not in a perfect world, but ideally we won't have like a neurodiversity initiative. It'll just be something people do because it's the right thing to do. But right now we do have companies actually have something that they've labeled, an neuro-inclusive recruitment strategy. But yeah, there's tons of stuff out there, Alex. I mean, we have success stories every day at the Alabama Department of Disabilities, whether it's a child that, is, achieving a milestone at a very young age that without intervention may not have done that, to a youth that is figuring out what they want to do when they finish high school. When someone told them, hey, you have a learning disability, we talk to them and say, you know what? No, you learn differently. And guess what? We have a ton of apps that will help you because you learn differently, do it this way. And quite frankly, it'll make your life a lot easier than your neurotypical counterparts often. Yeah. And so as those adults go into the workforce, Alabama has an amazing workforce program for veterans with disabilities as well. That's something I have a huge passion about. But there are all kinds of supports out there for you. Just know that there are allies out there for you. And, if you want to work right now, you absolutely can. There's nothing standing in your way. And so you could be our next success story.
And I think it's so important to have that work, to do work during the day that you feel proud of, be a part of a team that you agree with the mission of. I think I know I need that. In order to feel proud of what I do during the day, feel good about myself, I need to be giving back and be working on a part of a team. And I think being a part of that team and achieving a mission brings such satisfaction. So if you're wallowing and you're like, yeah, I don't know, you need to get out there. You need to join a team that you agree with, and you need to start kicking it. Now, you mentioned the 48 to 140%. Instead of saying, so for Goldman Sachs, Goldman Sachs was saying 48 to 140% some people are more productive that come from the neurodiverse community. I think they need to change it from neurodiverse recruiting to recruiting superheroes, because you're basically, you're getting so much more from the individual, and they're producing more. That's a superhero right there.
Absolutely. I mean, 1 in 7 of us, Alex, identify as neurodivergent from those stats earlier. So these are people in your church, they're in your neighborhood, they are in your coffee group. If you meet up for coffee, they're online when you game. Okay. So, that's a huge group of people, 1 in 7. So yeah, we have superheroes among us, that are, have all kinds of things. We just need to make sure that they can bring their whole self to school, and they can bring their whole self to the workforce. And, I just encourage you that are employers that are going to watch this or are watching now, that you make them welcome, and remember that, someone in your family probably is neurodivergent. Every time we train, we ask if anyone has experience working with people with disabilities, and, everyone raises their hands, just about, at least half the crowd, whether it's dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, ADHD. It's also a person with diabetes, a person that has experienced vision loss, and it's a person that might have a limb difference, so we all have people in our family with disabilities, or instead of a mental illness, we don't really say that anymore. We say a mental health condition, okay? Because illness, the word is so stigmatizing, there's a lot of people that have mental health conditions, and we want to support all people with disabilities so they can be their true self, their best self. And with accommodations or internal supports, everybody has the ability to work.
I think it boils down to empathy. Have empathy for your fellow human, and you'd be very surprised at what they can do. Support them and allow them to thrive there. Now, we've talked a lot about a lot of different resources today. You've given us some links that we're going to put in chat. We're not going to talk about all of those links and all those resources right now, but if you'd like to give a shout out maybe to 1 or 2 of those, we will put all of the links that you gave us into the chat, but let's just talk about 1 or 2 of those you'd like to shout out. Oh, we got a little bit. Oh, looks like our call dropped there. So I'm left on screen. If we can't get Mrs. Taylor back, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll go ahead and put the links in the chat. I had 2 more questions for Mrs. Taylor. We were kind of wrapping it up here. I was going to ask about some of the links she'd like to share and some of the resources. I was also going to ask about upcoming job fairs or events that she would recommend employers, attend, those kinds of things. And I was going to ask her one last one, which was, is there any, which is what I always ask, but here she comes. Mrs. Taylor's back with us. Oh, I can't hear you. Not yet. Can't hear you yet. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, we'll wait 1 second. We're waiting for the audio, guys. I am not going to sing you a tune right now. She's rejoining. But yeah, then the last question, which I always ask at the end of every interview, is what haven't we talked about that the community could benefit from hearing? Guys, I'm thinking about putting out a Facebook post. I know there's only a few watchers on with us today, but I'm thinking about putting out a Facebook post, a poll. Let me admit. Participants. Mrs. Taylor, can you hear me? No, I can't hear you. Clifton, can you hear Mrs. Taylor? No, not yet.
I cannot hear her.
Okay. Mrs. Taylor, can you still hear me? That's really weird. I don't know why that audio dropped out. But I'll tell you what, we're going to go ahead and wrap up today's broadcast. We'll go ahead and put those links into the chat there. And I just want to say I appreciate you taking time out this morning, this afternoon, to be with us here and share everything that you're doing and the success stories that the community here in Alabama and nationwide kind of sweeping through the employers, workplaces, the whole employee experience. So we appreciate you spending our time, and thank you once again for being with us here today. We will see you guys next time.